so much. Well, hi, everybody. Happy Earth Day. Like Ms. Boss said, my name is Jessie Rathburn, and I am a Loretto community co-member, and I live and work here at the Loretto Mother House in Loretto, Kentucky. So I'm very happy to be with you all today and to talk with you about Earth on this very, very special day that we set aside to celebrate and honor Earth. I want to begin by acknowledging that I am coming to you from the ancestral lands of the Shawnee, the Yuchi, the Cherokee, and the Osage peoples. So today, instead of just telling you what the Loretto community is doing for Earth or telling you about our history of Earth, I want to bring you into this moment in time in our journey. And to bring you into conversations that we are having as a community as well. You are part of the Loretto community. We are a broad community of vowed members and co-members and students and friends. And as we work to journey more closely with Earth, it's really important that we are all thinking about these same questions and continuing on this journey together. So that's what I want to do with you today. So as we think about Earth Day, we think about how this is a day to celebrate Earth and to look at our place in this diverse, evolving, ever-expanding universe. It's a bit of a paradox, though, because it's also a day when we raise awareness and call attention to the harms that are being enacted against Earth. And the thing is that we are the ones, our species, humans are the ones who are enacting all of those harms. So it's an interesting day. It's a day of celebration and love and gratitude. And it's also a day of reflection, of looking at our own practices and how they are harming this planet that is our home. So we step into that paradox together of celebration and joy, and also of pain and acknowledging the pieces that may need to change. And today we're at a particularly interesting moment in the course of human history. We have more knowledge than ever before about the state of Earth, about ourselves as a species, but it makes me wonder, is that leading to a different way of being? Is all of that knowledge really leading to any kind of real change? So let's take a few steps back and think about the very first Earth Day. The year was 1970, and all of humanity's understanding of our planet had radically shifted in the past few years because of one really important thing that happened. So I want to do an imagination exercise with you. I want you to close your eyes for a minute, and I want you to visualize the planet Earth. Visualize our planet. Think about what colors you see, what shape you see, what textures there are, and also think about your perspective. Where is it that you are viewing the planet from? So probably if you open your eyes, probably most of you thought of something that looked like this, right? We've all seen this picture a million times. You grew up seeing this picture. I grew up seeing this picture. But before the late 1960s, no one in the world had ever seen a picture like this. It was only on one of the Apollo missions when they took this picture from out in space that humans for the first time saw our planet as a whole. And so think about for a second what that would have been like to have never seen the planet that you are on, to not really have that full view of what our home looks like. How would seeing that all of a sudden, how would that change your perception of who we are as humans and who we are on Earth? What do you think that might have made people think about or think differently about? I want you to turn and talk to the person next to you about what you think it would have been like for you if you saw this picture for the first time and you had never seen anything like it before. Go ahead and talk to your neighbor for a second. All right, so let's come back together. I wish I was there in person so I could easily hear some of your responses, but we'll have time at the end to share with the whole group. But when this happened, it was a really enormous shift for all of humanity. And I actually was just talking with my mom about it yesterday. And she said, not only did it make us see ourselves as one united body of humankind around the world, but it really put into perspective that our planet has limits and that there are limits to all that Earth can provide for us. And so on that very first Earth Day, 20 million people went out and demonstrated, which was an enormous number of people. That was 10% of the entire US population at that time was out on the streets demonstrating for Earth Day. And a lot of the things that they were demonstrating about were these harms that we have enacted. Rachel Carson had just written Silent Spring a few years before, which had to do with the effects of pesticides. There had been massive oil spills that people were protesting. Air pollution was getting really, really bad in cities. And so people were protesting air pollution. And from that first Earth Day, it led to the creation of the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. And many environmental laws were passed after that first Earth Day, including the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act. So it had monumental consequences, particularly at the beginning for those of us in the United States. But then it spread and became a global movement. And now Earth Day is celebrated around the world. But what we know today is that things are frankly a lot worse than they were at that moment in 1970. We know that the speed of change that we're experiencing right now exceeds anything we have known in the last 10,000 years. We have species that are going extinct. We have Arctic ice that is disappearing. In the atmosphere, we're now at 415 parts per million of carbon, where the maximum amount necessary to have that balance is 350 million. So we're already 65 million parts per million beyond that. And we're really facing the reality of this global imprint of humans on Earth and looking at how we are altering the fundamentals of this living planet. So with all of that knowledge, we have to ask ourselves, how does this knowledge inform both our responsibility and our joy? How should we celebrate this Earth Day together, knowing what we know? Earth Day is often celebrated by community gatherings or some sort of community cleanup, taking a pledge of some kind, participating in a demonstration of some kind. And these are all really good things to do. I participated in a community cleanup a few miles down the road from here yesterday. It was a great thing to do. We cleaned up a creek, we cleaned up a community park. So these are all really important. But if we start and stop with those discrete actions, then what we're doing is we're focusing on the symptoms of our current condition instead of getting to the root of the crisis, and instead of looking at what's possible and what we can change. So in thinking about what is the root of that crisis, I want us to reflect a little bit on who we are as a species, as humans. Out of the 8.7 million species on Earth, we are the only ones who have come to understand ourselves and who operate as if we are separate from all the rest. And this has informed all aspects of our societies and of our structures, so that now our lives and our systems are built on this framework of separation and separability, which has turned into systems of domination and control of each other and of Earth. So basically, we think that we are separate from Earth and from all other species, but that simply isn't true. We know that we are closely related to several other species. The genetic difference between humans and bonobos or chimpanzees is only 1.2%. And we also know that we are actually made up of stardust. Every atom of oxygen in our lungs, of carbon in our muscles, of calcium in our bones, of iron in our blood, all of that was created in a star before Earth was born. And it's very likely that there are a whole lot of different stars that have contributed not only to the elements in our own solar system and our planet, but all of those found within you. So just think about that for a minute. Every time I think about this, it kind of gives me the chills when I think about these stars that were created millions and billions of years ago. And the energy from those stars, that's what makes up my very physical being. That's what is at my core inside of me. So if we combine all of these elements in different ways, you can make species of gas, of minerals, of bigger things like asteroids. And from asteroids, you can start making planets, and then you start to make water and the other ingredients for life. And then eventually here we are as one of now 8.7 million species. So in essence, we are earthlings, or beings born of Earth, extensions of Earth, just as is every orchid, fern, oak tree, elephant, mosquito, and polar bear. We are all earthlings together. So here's another way to think about this. Indigenous lawyer, author, teacher, and activist Sherry Mitchell of the Penobscot and Passamaquoddy tribes teaches that relationships exist among all living symptoms, and these symptoms are constantly moving toward harmony and balance. But we humans have been habituated to view the world in fractured pieces instead of as this whole. So what happens when we view the world in fractured pieces is that our environment and societies also become fractured, and we act more and more through violence and domination, extraction, greed, and competition. And many of the crises that we see today, the racial injustice, the climate change, species loss, poverty, the list could go on and on. These are actually just symptoms of that larger fracturing. We as human beings have forgotten how to live in relationship with the rest of creation. But the good news is that we weren't always like this. At one point, we knew how to live in relationship. And so today I want to talk about how we can get that back. Instead of looking at the state of the climate crisis or some particular new invention or discovery, I want us on this Earth Day to focus on this idea of relationship. So I want you now to think about a relationship that is important to you. Maybe it's a relationship with a sibling or a friend or a parent, someone you're dating, a teacher. Think of any important relationship in your life and think about these big questions. How do you know that you're in a relationship with this person? What does it mean to be in a relationship? What are the signs of a healthy relationship? So go ahead and turn and talk to your partner again about what this being in a relationship, what does that mean? How do you know? Go ahead and talk for about 40 seconds. All right, let's come back together. I would love to hear what you're saying. But I want to talk a little bit more about this idea of relationship. There's a woman who I've read a lot of now and have come to think of as one of my teachers. Her name is Robin Wall Kimmerer. She's an Indigenous author, botanist, and renowned teacher. And she often talks about the idea of reciprocity to restore relationship between humans and the natural world. And she teaches us a few things. First, she teaches us how to notice relationships in the natural world and to see the reciprocity that is expressed through all of their interactions. And she writes, this is a quote from one of her books. She says, if you get down on your knees, you will see ant hills, no bigger than a quarter. The granulated oil the ants have mounded around the hole is white as snow. Grain by grain, in their tiny mandibles, they're carrying up waste from below and carrying seeds and bits of leaves down into the soil, shuttling back and forth. The grasses feed the ants with seeds, and the ants feed the grasses with soil. They hand off life to one another. They understand their interconnections. They understand that the life of one is dependent on the life of all. Leaf by leaf, root by root, the trees, the berries, the grasses are joining forces. And so there are birds and deer and bugs that have come to join them. And so the world is made. So this idea of being mindful and noticing how parts of the whole work together in tandem, each contributing to the life of the whole, can help us find our unique role as humans. Robin then asks us to think about the gifts that we can offer in reciprocity for all that Earth gives us. We live on a planet that provides everything we need. It creates medicine, shelter, grows food, and provides endless beauty for us to enjoy. In a world that continues to give so much, even when we respond with harm in return, what is our response to that? What is our response to this endless giving and giving and giving? Robin encourages us not to only think about what we can take from Earth, but what we can give in return. And she talks about this responsibility as gift, and that this is our unique role as a species, our gift that we can offer in reciprocity to Earth for all that Earth gives us. So this is what she's calling us to find ways to act in reciprocity. Maybe you can do it through gratitude, through mutual respect and responsibility, by paying attention and being mindful, through ceremony, through land restoration and stewardship, through science, art, or in everyday acts of personal reverence. And all of this brings us back to that idea of being in relationship. So again, think about that really important relationship in your life. If I asked you to describe that relationship, you probably wouldn't list just one or two things that you do for the other person. Maybe you clear the dishes from the table after dinner or babysit your little brother or sister without complaining. But that's not how you would describe your relationship with your parents. Those are simply ways of being that emerge from these years of developing a relationship with those whom you love. And the same is true of Earth. When we think about what can I do, we often tend to think of single solutions that tend to oversimplify what we're facing. We think about recycling or doing a community cleanup or driving an electric car. All of those are good things. Those are all things that we should aspire to do. But those things in and of themselves aren't what it means to be in relationship. Relationship is this way of being, of learning, of listening, of having fun, of engaging in this give and take, of sharing of yourself, of hoping together for the future, of being changed by each other. And when we're able to enter into relationship with Earth in this way and to deepen those bonds, a couple of things will happen. One is that when you continue to be in relationship, you see abundance. So much of what we hear about the Earth these days is based in crisis, in calamity, in this near apocalyptic state. And while much of that is true, it is not the entire truth. For when we are in relationship, we begin to view Earth not from a position of scarcity, but from a position of abundance. Earth offers us so much, even while wounded, even while parts of Earth are degraded. Earth still cares for us and provides what we need. Imagine how much more life and biodiversity and beauty there will be when we learn to live within the natural limits and honor our relationship with Earth. So we begin to see that our responsibility to Earth is a responsibility to find that sense of peace and balance within ourselves first. We also recognize that we cannot look at Earth as a problem to be solved anymore. We're constantly looking for new technologies to draw down carbon, or new strategies to rewild degraded spaces, or new ways to pollinate plants after all of the pollinators have died. But when we're truly in relationship with Earth, we understand that the solutions cannot necessarily come from us. Our species has created these problems, and it's pretty futile to think that we can attack the climate crisis from a purely human perspective. We have to learn to trust the natural world, to trust Earth's healing abilities. And this is not necessarily an attribute that we're really good at, but this is our responsibility: to be still, to be quiet, to listen to Earth deeply, and to learn to experience the healing that Earth can offer, both to us as humans and to the more than human world. There's an old adage that says we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. So we need to listen twice as much as we speak. We like to try to come up with solutions for the problems we have created, but perhaps our job is to learn to listen. And maybe in this way, we will be able to be partners in Earth's healing capacities. This requires us to have a deep sense of humility that we as humans will have to work hard to cultivate. It's not an easy task that we have set before us, but it's not a road we have to walk on alone. Remember, this whole road is about relationship with each other and with Earth. And there's another beautiful thing about us as humans. When we see collapse, we tend to respond. Think about all the campaigns that you may have participated in or heard about over the years. Save the world, or excuse me, save the whales, stop global warming, stop glaciers from melting, divest from fossil fuels. All of these campaigns have been effective. No one wants to see the places that we love being destroyed. So when we recognize that we are seeing the destruction of the very thing that we rely on for our being, we can respond with care, with respect and responsibility and restoration. We can respond with reciprocity. And all these changes that we enact will not only benefit ourselves, but future generations as well. So you might be sitting there thinking, okay, great, what a lovely idea for Earth Day. But with all of this relationship and reciprocity talk, what am I supposed to do? What do I do when I walk out of this assembly and go to my next class? Well, let's go back to that idea of being in relationship with another person. It's not a checklist with people, right? You don't like Google top 10 ways to take care of your mom. But we do that for Earth. In thinking that we're separate, we create separate categories or exercises of response to all the problems that we see around us. But when we're in relationship, our orientation changes. Our way of being orients us towards the other person or the other being. So just as we are oriented towards certain people, we can become oriented toward Earth as well. And so, since we need to let the world be our natural teacher, I want to share with you an example of what I have learned from Earth here on this property at the Mother House. I want to share with you the story of a particular beech tree on our property. Beech trees, you've probably seen them. You've got them in Colorado. They're really large, beautiful shade trees. They can grow up to 70 feet tall. They produce edible beech nuts. They can live for hundreds of years, and they have a really recognizable smooth gray bark. It kind of looks like an elephant skin. It's an easy way to recognize them. So there's one particular beech tree in our woods that when you first start to see it, you might think, well, there's not much special about this tree. But when you get closer, you'll notice that it has some unique attributes. You can see down at the bottom that the trunk is together as one. And as you go up the trunk, you will see where it split and then came back together. And it split and came back together again. When my husband and I discovered this tree in our woods after we moved here, we were both amazed. We had never seen this happen before. We've often seen trees where the trunk splits and grows into like two separate trees next to each other, but I had never seen it come back together like this. And so I started looking into it. And this is the phenomenon that happens sometimes in nature. Robert McFarlane describes it like this: living wood, left long enough, behaves as a slow-moving fluid. Living wood flows over time. When these limbs are close enough together that they touch, they melt into one another, their bark conjoining into a single continuous skin, their vascular systems growing and uniting, so that just by being in that close proximity for long enough, they grow together and their systems combine and they become one. This can happen with branches on the same tree like we can see here, or it can even happen across species. The word for this phenomenon is called inosculation. It's from the Latin word osculare, which means to kiss. And so this is the idea of being enkissed, where it's hard to say where one being ends and the other begins. These two beings draw their structure and sustenance from each other. In essence, they're sharing their strength together. And this happens below ground a whole lot more than it happens above ground. We just don't see it. It happens in root systems, it happens in the fungal networks. But when we see it above ground, it's this truly beautiful phenomenon. So the question that I think of is, what would it look like if we as humans positioned ourselves so closely to Earth that we could slowly start to grow together and eventually be recognized as part of the same being? Does this mean recycling and composting and changing our light bulbs and buying local food and all of those things that we think we need to do for Earth? Well, yes, it does. It means those things, but it's much more than that. It's moving beyond the mindset of having this checklist of items and recognizing the ways in which we are deeply, deeply interconnected with Earth. It's asking ourselves over and over to grow and to learn and to think, am I living in a way in which Earth is grateful for me? Excuse me. So on this Earth Day, I want to invite you to do an exercise, a reflective exercise that we will share with the Mother House community. So sorry. When the AP Environmental Science class was here, we created 5 intergenerational conversation trees, and we are going to complete those trees together today. You will be given 1 or 2 leaves on which you will write a message that will be sent back to us here at the Mother House. And I will hang all the leaves on the trees and put them in places around our campus so the community can hear your voices. And there are 2 questions that I'm asking you to respond to. You can do it on one side of your leaf and the other side, or if you need 2 leaves, there should be extras. So the first is this question of relationship or reciprocity. Robin says that our work is to discover what we can give to Earth. So on one side, I want you to think about, what is your gift that you can offer Earth? And write that on your leaf. What is your gift that you can offer Earth? And then on the second side, I want you to think of something a little bit different. You have a unique voice and a unique perspective where you are in your life. You're in high school right now. You're going to be going off to college soon. And there are challenges that you're going to face that even my generation won't face. And certainly many of the Sisters of Loretto and community members of Loretto will never face. And we all need to hear your voice and your perspective. So these problems that we're facing today, climate change, biodiversity loss, storms, all of this, these have been created by human structures and systems. And it is my generation and those following, your generations, who are really going to have to deal with the repercussions of these calamities, and we'll have to find new ways to open ourselves up to the restoration of Earth. So with this in mind, I wonder what you would like to ask of or to say to our community members who have been working for justice for decades, both for the human community and for Earth. As you begin to navigate this rapidly changing world on your own, do you have a message or a question for those who are nearer to the end of this part of their journey? So that's side 2 of your leaf. First side is, what is your gift that you can offer Earth? And the second side has to do with, do you have a message or a question, thinking from your unique perspective and where you're going to be going on your life? Do you have something to say, to share with the rest of the Loretto community? So right now, some folks are probably passing out leaves. I'm going to give you a few minutes to write on both sides of your leaf, and then you can also talk with those around you and share what you've written. So just to recap, like, we have so much knowledge these days about Earth, about who we are, about technology, about possibilities. But again, Robin Wall Kimmerer says, what good is knowledge without caring? If we don't have that caring, what good is all of this knowledge going to do with us? And so all of this knowing that we are capable of has to be grounded in this idea of relationship. And I also just want to say something really quickly about making mistakes and failing forward. We're going to fail, right? We're going to discover things about what we're doing that might be harmful to Earth. Sometimes it seems like things are so overwhelming that we just don't know where to start. But I don't want you to get caught in that place of paralysis. I love this idea of failing forward, of we're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. But the idea is that we don't make the same mistakes twice. We build some stamina, we pick ourselves up, we learn from the mistake that we made, and we move forward. So this idea of, sure, we're going to make mistakes and we're going to fail, but we're going to fail forward. We're not going to fail backwards. That's been really, really helpful to me as I move through this journey, because it's hard and we don't always have clear answers. But that's how relationships are, right? They can be murky. It's not always just black and white, right and wrong. I want to bring in one more set of voices into this time. And it's from the editors of this book that I love called All We Can Save. Their names are Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson and Catherine K. Wilkinson. And in this book, they write, we need every solution and every solver. What this moment calls for is a mosaic of voices, the full spectrum of ideas and insights for how we can turn things around. Humanity simply cannot survive the status quo, and neither can many other species and ecosystems. But this is where possibility lives, the possibility that we can turn away from the brink and move toward a life-giving future for all. So let's just think. Can you imagine all of us trusting each other, working together, being in relationship with our common home? Think about the possibilities.
So today we are celebrating the 52nd Earth Day, which almost coincides with the Loretto Foundation Day, which is on April 25th. So Monday will mark the 210th anniversary of Loretto's founding on the Kentucky frontier. Now, 210 years later, Loretto community members act for peace in a world more complex than in Kentucky in 1812. In this special week, SMA honors our Loretto roots as we educate ourselves in caring for Earth. I'm here today with Kat Gabriel, Kat Adam, and Sarah Burke. Okay, who visited the Loretto Mother House during our spring break. We'll share what we have learned about the history of the Mother House and their daily sustainable practices. I was inspired to take my AP Environmental Science students to the Mother House because of these sustainable agricultural as well as guiding Loretto principles, which coincide with what I teach in my class. But 3 years ago, I first came up with, 3 or 4 years ago, I came up with this idea after being inspired by my visit to the Mother House with some other teachers from SMA. And so from now on, I will continue to offer this trip for those environmental science students who would like to visit the Mother House and learn about these more sustainable practices that I teach in my class. Jessie took some time putting together our daily itinerary, and she planned so many fun activities. So we're going to take turns sharing exactly what we did during our trip. So let me go ahead and share my screen with you. Okay, so we're going to share some pictures and our stories, our adventures while at the Mother House. So one of the activities that we did while at the Mother House, besides seeing this beautiful landscape, beautiful sunrises and sunset, and just spending a lot of time together, but Jessie thoughtfully planned this itinerary, and one of the activities involved walking through the nature preserve area, which this is a scene from the forest where we're walking through there, observing the trees and wildlife and learning about the green burials which have taken place in this area. Several of the sisters chose a more sustainable way of being buried, which does not involve preserving the body with chemicals or using coffins. A natural cloth with a bed of flowers are instead placed in a shallow grave, which is covered with a stone with their name and lifespan. I admire these sisters who choose to give back nutrients to the earth in a more sustainable fashion at the end of their lives. And here we can see Jessie talking about the trees, some of the birch trees that she mentioned. And in the lower picture, we can see where this nature preserve cemetery is located. And we also found a frog, which is in the upper right-hand corner that Kat was able to catch. So, okay, I'm going to pass this on.
Oh, it's, okay, yeah, you're in first.
Kat? You can put it up here if you don't want.
Okay, so another activity that we did was, okay, we went to the Cordwood cabin, which is Susan's cabin. And so basically the entire cabin is like built of sustainable or like reused materials. So like the wood, a lot of the wood that she used was like fallen wood or like wood that she found in like abandoned like barns around the area. And then also up here you can see there's the compost toilet that she uses. And then yeah, and then we also went and we looked at one of the Cedars of Peace cabins, which is this one right there. And basically the Cedars of Peace cabins is like a place you can stay. They're also built sustainably. And it's like a place you can stay and just like be like with yourself and with nature. And so like while you're outside, you can't talk at all. And like, you just have to be like quiet and like, just like listen to nature and really just like take the time to like take space for yourself and for nature. So another thing that we did is we went to the Heritage Center and we got a tour. And so we looked around at like a lot of things. And then down here is the protest room, which is, it shows like a lot of the protests that they've been to. And all those crosses represent all of the missing people, not all of, but a lot of the missing people in, where was the missing people? In South America and, or Central and South America. And so, yeah, so those represented them and they would walk down the street and protest that happening. So, yeah, and then they also protested a lot of other things, like especially in their community, they protested a pipeline being built that would destroy a lot of woods. And then also my favorite part was learning about like all the different schools that they built all over the world and helped like found and taught at, which was like over 100 schools. And we're only one of 4 that are still like operating today. So I thought that was really cool.
So we went on a farm tour, which was, I thought it was a lot of fun. So it started and we met Cody, who's the guy who's driving. So this entire farm that I believe is around 500 acres, because the entire property is around 800 acres. The 500-acre farm is operated by two guys, Cody, I don't know the other guy, we didn't really meet him, and their dog, who's really cute and who rides with them. And they raise cattle, they raise cows for meat. They don't have dairy cows, and they grow soybeans and corn with a wildflower cover crop. It was really fun. It was really cool. It's huge. The way that they do their pastures with their cows is they rotate them every 1 to 2 days. So the cows are feeding on new grass. It keeps the grass really healthy. You're able to sequester a lot more carbon that way, and it just overall maintains the health of the entire farm. Also, the way that they do water is instead of buying water from the state, which is how a lot of people get their water, they just reuse water from one of the ponds on their properties for the cows, because the cows aren't like, their systems can handle dirty water versus ours that can't. So they just reuse that water, which I thought was really interesting. And then we did an eco-spirituality practice and cosmic walk, which I thought was really interesting. Basically, like you can see how there are all these candles set up on this one thing, this one linear little string thing that goes around in a circle, and it's supposed to represent different time, and well, just time in general. But every single candle was something different that led to humanity being created, but the way that it was spaced out was proportionate to how much time had passed. And kind of in that one, you can see how there's so much time, and then just the last candles on the pan, humanity was established, and Homo sapiens, we found like the fossils of the first Homo sapiens at a candle halfway through that pan. So I thought it was interesting because I felt like it showed us just how little we've been on this earth, but on the other hand, how much time and how little time we've been here, how much damage we've been able to do in that small amount of time. But on top of that, just how little time it could take to turn it around, and how much time we do have to make things better, because we have a responsibility to do that.
Okay, so another activity we did was we kind of got to walk around the property and learn about the trees. And one thing that they've been doing is they hired like a company that are like professionals at trees and stuff. And they like identified and labeled most of the trees on the property just to kind of understand like where they came from, how long they've been here, and just to better understand the everything surrounding the land. So what we did was we kind of walked around and picked a tree that we liked that wasn't labeled yet, and then we went back inside and like read books and did some research that would contribute to like all of the rest of the research that has already been done for those trees. And then we did a landscaping project. So basically kind of in the center near where a lot of the older nuns live, and by the cafeteria, there's a courtyard. And in the courtyard, you can kind of see like that little hill, it was eroding from the rain. So we went out and got a bunch of large rocks from an old wall. And how old? More than 200 years old. And then we brought it back, and you can see it in the pictures, but we basically cleaned it up. There was like a drainage grate that we cleaned out and kind of made a path for the water to drain so it wouldn't erode all the bushes and stuff that's in their courtyard.
I decided to make a video, a little montage, if you may, because it's fun, and I feel like it can sound a little scary, like going to places where these retired nuns are. So this video is to show you that it is in fact a lot of fun.
Yes,
And it's a good time.
much fun. Thank you.
That was fun.
So thanks, Kat, for creating that. It's just, it did show how much fun we had. I thoroughly enjoyed traveling with all of them. They were great travel partners, and we felt like our time was so short there, but we were able to at least give back a little bit and learn a lot about the history of the Mother House and see this most beautiful property, which this just captures just a glimpse of it. So I encourage you, if you're given that opportunity as a sophomore or for my class, to go to the Mother House and experience it yourself. I feel fortunate to teach here and to have discovered this Loretto community. And I will continue to go back, and even beyond these trips, I hope to spend more time at the Mother House. I'd like to end with a thank you note. I had my sophomores write thank you notes to the Earth yesterday, and I hope my student doesn't mind that I read this. She's not here today, but she said, "Dear Earth, you are so beautiful. I love you so much. I wanted to thank you for everything you've given to me so far. I hope that you live forever. I've tried so hard to be good to you, but I fail a lot. Thank you, though, for giving me life and keeping me alive. Thank you for showing me how beautiful life can be. Thank you for keeping me happy and comfortable. Thank you for being my mother. I love you." So I thought that was really sweet and pretty much spoke to my sentiments on how I feel about Earth. So happy Earth Day, and thank you, Jessie, so much for taking the time again to visit with us.